All right, everybody, welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. I'm with Dennis Conforto. I met him while I was on my mission trip as well, and he is the founder of HouseCheck. He's been able to do a lot of really good things with his life, and he was homeless at one point in time, so he has a very unique perspective on life. And I talked with him for a long time today, and I really appreciated his thoughts. It really kind of helped me dig into myself. So excited to have him on the show for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of go back to that moment, because I feel like that's kind of maybe the climax of your life was that day right after you graduated from high school. Kind of bring us back to that moment real fast.
All right. Well, first of all, I would reframe it. I wouldn't call it the climax of my life because, but that was a pivot point in my life. So life is full of pivots that you have to make. And so, so the day I graduated from high school, I got up the next morning. My grandparents, I was being raised by my grandparents. My grandfather said it was time for me to grow up and be a man. And he told me to eat breakfast and leave. It was that fast. And I was quite unprepared. I didn't believe him. There's a movie out. You can go to DennisConforto.com. And it's called Curses the Ground, and you can click on that and kind of see a movie that one of my sons made when he was learning to be a movie director, producer, and so forth, which is his career today. And my grandfather had everything packed up outside, and for me to leave, and I went outside, saw my stuff. I went to go back in the house, and he locked the door, locked the windows, and I couldn't get in. So I stayed outside for about 2 hours. Eventually, I worked my way on a bus to downtown Seattle. I had all sorts of interesting events that happened the first 2 weeks. An apartment, and the Social Security department came in to visit him, and at the time, and found me there and said, "You can't live off a blind guy. Get out of here." So then I ended up homeless for a year in the shadow of the Space Needle, which had a real impact in my life. Made me do a lot of thinking. I really didn't talk to anybody for a year. I was left to my own devices, my own inner thoughts. That's happened 3 times in my life where I was left kind of isolated and alone. That was the first time, and then there were other subsequent events that happened in my life that put me in a position of kind of being isolated. And in my isolation, I seem to have my deepest thoughts. So those become pivot points to me. And I think every day in life we're faced with a series of choices that we have to make. We get to these, you either go left or right. And some choices, sometimes we think of choices as good or bad. Sometimes they're good, better, and best. They have nothing to do with bad. And it's really, it takes a while to learn what is the best possible choice you can make with all the choices that are available for you. So these pivot points become really important, figuring them out in your life, because they have so much to do with where you end up, how you think, how you see yourself, and how you see others.
Yeah, I think you said that, really, really powerfully. Just how you act in those pivot points, will determine a lot of different things. So were there any friends you made, like, really quick? Well, you said you were kind of on your own, actually. Well, from the story that I heard on the podcast, the radio show you were on, you said that you were in a sink and you'd bathe yourself with the powdered soap and other things. And
yeah.
So how did you get that job?
Yeah, so I would go over to, I still had, you can be homeless and clean, right? So there was a gas station across from a series of trees that I was hiding under. And so every day I would lock myself in the bathroom. They had a little sink there and powdered soap. So you would hit the little button, the powder soap would get in, and you would, do your thing. So I did my laundry in the sink. I tried to take kind of a shower in the sink or outside of the sinks, and then would dry myself off. So it was very difficult. It was very humiliating. I wasn't humiliated in front of anybody. The worst kind of humiliation is self-humiliating, where you're isolated and by yourself, and you're humiliated of yourself, that you're in this situation that you can't seem to get out of, and it can make you feel horrible about yourself, about who you are and what you can do and what you can't do, and then you have two voices that you got to listen to: the voice that says you can do anything and be anything, and the voice that says you can be nothing, you'll never amount to anything in life. So your inner thoughts can free you or debilitate you. So I think in that homeless situation, that's where I learned the art of thinking about who I was, and then what I wanted to do, and then what my purpose was going to be in my life. Trying to figure out the purpose. And then, and I don't know if you've had this experience yourself. You're what, 24 years old?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is something you're going to find out as you age. Every 10 years, you are the same person, but you're a different person. So just think about the person you were when you were 10, and then you got to 20, entirely different. Person you were at 10 and when you were a baby, entirely different. Same person, same kind of idiosyncrasies that you've always had. Your parents will see in you things today that remind them of exactly what you were like when you were 6 years old. The way you smile, the way you look, the way you talk, the way you react, and those don't change throughout your life. But every 10 years, you really start to become a different person, because you add 10 years of experience, and it changes your view. So as a child, you learn to think by the rules of your parents. Everything is black and white. And as you age, everything becomes a series of grays. And most of us like to live in a life that's black and white, where the decisions are really easy. It's right or wrong. But after a while, because of the way other people think, you get thrown into a sea of gray, and then it becomes more difficult for you to navigate if you're black and white. And I happen to be a black and white person. So in a sea of gray, it's very challenging to take a gray and decide, is it really gray or is it black? Is it really gray or is it white? And then try to navigate through all of that process. So every 10 years, you become a different person. So I was 60. I'm 68 now. I'm about to turn 70. And the person I was at 60 is no longer here. At 68, I can tell that guy is, I'm completely different over the last 8 years worth of experiences. And yet I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, there's a lot of people I feel that don't make those changes, and they kind of choose to stay the same. Would you say that the same mindset and other things like that kind of guided you and helped you when you were homeless is kind of the same you use now, or how's that evolved over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me reframe the question the way that it translated in my mind. And that is, I question every day the things I believe in the most. I challenge it every day. So let's say if you're a religious person, I happen to be. So I get up first thing in the morning and I question, is there really a God? Really, is there really a God? Or is it this kind of thing that people make up, that I buy into it from other people, and I go through a process of my mind to validate what it is that I believe. I do it in business, I do it in relationships, I do it in personal things, because I want to question always the things that are most important to me. What I've learned in doing that is my answers over time can change slightly. They become more refined, they become more rich, they become more deep. And I think it's important that as you grow and learn, that you're actually changing. In politics, they call it flip-flopping, right? And it's viewed as a negative thing. I think it's ridiculous that people can actually believe that what they thought when they were 16, that they never flip-flop, and that, now they're, 86 years old, and, and there may be some things that you don't flip-flop on, and that of course is true. But there's so many things that you gain experience on, and you realize that when you were younger, you just didn't know what the heck what you were talking about. I recently wrote a little piece about the changes that people make in life based on the experiences that they have. And I use a series of analogies in that process. And I really like that piece because I realize that I always want to change. I don't want to remain the same. I'm looking for a better version of myself. So, I just turned 68, right? I am now working on version 69 of myself. It is released on May 15th, which happens to be my birthday, in 2021. Version 60, well, no, I'm 68. So version 69 is coming. So I've had, I look at it as software, getting rid of bugs. And I still have the bugs from the 17-year-old, because I still do stupid things like I did when I was 17, I may say in a group of people pushing a joke and just take it a little too far. And I know I take it a little too far, and people go like, that ain't that funny. And that's that 17-year-old flaw coming out of me, that version of software that I didn't quite fully delete yet. So I think there's great power in always releasing a new version of yourself every year. If you don't do that, then you're really remaining the same, and you're not improving. And you're saying that I'm okay the way I am. And I've never felt okay the way I am. I always internally knew there was a better version of me, a smarter version of me. And I was always looking for him. And I'm really grateful to know that no matter how old I get, I will never arrive at the best version of me. My best version of me will be my last year of my life. I hope. I hope that's the best year of my life, the best version of me. So.
Yeah, it's a fantastic perspective. I feel like there's all kinds of people that just want to be living their, best life now. And from your example, that's, improving with each version, and, taking out what bugs you can, and just, making the most of it.
You almost have to change because the world around you is changing all the time, right? The technology changes, so you got to adapt if you want to communicate. The way I communicated in the 1960s and 70s, there was no cell phones, and just everything has changed. But I happen to be a very young 68-year-old. I'm very up on the latest technologies. I'm very up on the latest video games. I know what a 16-year-old is talking about. If they mention the latest video game, I know exactly what they're talking about. I know the latest music that's out. I find it all interesting. I may like it or I may not like it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just interested in what everybody thinks and feels, because I want to be able to relate to people, and I got to relate to people of all ages. And one of the ways I relate to people is I want to understand them. So I have this empathy chip inside of me, and empathy, I think, is reflected when you can feel like the person that you are trying to relate to, right? So, try to relate to, as a man, to a pregnant woman. You really have to, it's almost like being an actor. Like, you got to get inside that place, observe them to begin to have empathy of what it might be like to be walking around with another body inside of you, and what it does to your back and all that kind of stuff. Now, while you can't duplicate it under any circumstances, you just can't. you can at least learn to empathize with it. And then when you learn to empathize, you then become considerate and thoughtful of the people around you, and you do random acts of kindness all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something I've learned in my life pretty early on, is the joy of just scattering sunshine and enjoying those moments to kind of lift people up and stuff. So let's kind of go back to
Yeah.
when you're in that homeless condition. What were like your talents? Did you see yourself as being a writer or business person, or what were some talents that you knew you had, and how did they grow over time? Because you had to like put something to work to get to where you're at now.
No, I had no talent. I didn't see myself as a talent. To understand what it was like for me to be homeless, and everybody's homelessness is different. It's all unique. I was raised by a grandfather who kept telling me I was retarded. So I want you to think, if you believe that you're retarded and now you're homeless, you now have proof and evidence that what your grandfather was telling you was in fact true, right?
Yeah.
So you don't think about talents you have. You are living in a world where you're going like, I got no talents. I'm retarded. I'm limited in what I can do. So I will tell you, the biggest thing for me, the biggest pivot point in my life that changed my life, is the day I woke up and I realized that nobody believed in me, including me, and that if anybody had to believe in me, it was me. And I had to start with me. And I had to fight every day. Imagine fighting every day just to believe in you. Every day you woke up, knowing that everything around you gave you evidence of all the reasons why you shouldn't believe in you and nobody should believe in you. And then fighting through that thought over and over again, that I'm looking out from these trees and looking at families laughing out in the park and all of that, and the wonderful life that they have. And I have this horrible life of despair and loneliness and depression and shame. And, it is difficult for people to understand what it is like to be homeless. I wrote a piece about this called I think it's called My First Christmas. You can go onto my Facebook page, and in my Facebook page, there is a section, if you go about me, if you go all the way down to that series of choices, there's a note section. If you click on the note section and open it up, you can see various chapters of my book that I have written. And it's not a chapter in my book, but it is a story that I write about my first Christmas alone. And in that, I describe what it is like to be homeless, truly homeless. And it is, and it's probably the most powerful thing I have ever written. I talk about having the eyes to see, but not being able to see my own reflection, having arms, but no one to hug to, having a mouth, but no one to speak to, having a belief, but nothing to believe in, including myself. So it was really debilitating going through that process. But eventually I had this thought on that Christmas day, because I was under an evergreen tree that looked like a Christmas tree. And my thought was that Christmas morning that I was a present under a tree for somebody else. That was the first time when I realized that I might be somebody. It was on a Christmas morning in 1970, alone and isolated under a tree, and thinking that I was a gift from God to somebody, and if I was going to be a gift from God to somebody, that I had to start believing that I was a present, that I was going to be a gift. And it began to transform me to thinking about, how do I become a gift? I had read a passage of scripture because I read the traditional Christmas story found in Luke, And there was a line in there that there was no room in the inn. And for the first time, I realized as a homeless person that the person I believed in most in my life was homeless. And that if anybody could understand what it might be like for me to be homeless, it was him. And that began to transform everything, how I viewed myself. Now, the interesting thing is the reason I got out of being homeless is because I ran out of money. Now, isn't that the interesting thing?
That is super
I
interesting.
had money. I had money, plenty of money, but I didn't know how to rent a place. I did not know how to get a job because I worked for my grandfather. When he threw me out of the house, he gave me an envelope of all the money I had earned. And I had thousands and thousands of dollars, and I was running back and forth to the gas station to buy food in a little grocery store, and then coming back, and I would leave one time a day and come back. I had 15 minutes. I timed it. If I had to use the restroom, it was one time a day. If I was going to do my laundry, it was one time a day. If I was going to eat, I'd run out, eat, and would come back. And that was because I had no walls. I had no home. And all my stuff was there under the bush. And other homeless people knew that I was there, and I didn't want my stuff stolen. So I had to be very careful when I left. And when I ran quickly. But eventually, I ran out of money. And for 2 weeks, I didn't eat. And I had a dream that kind of changed me, and it was a dream about a limousine that was driving down a cobblestone street, and the window rolled down, and a woman's hand came out, and she threw an apple core out of the window, and it rolled into the gutter that I was lying in, and the apple core and the dirty water were kind of rolling towards me, and I realized that was my meal. That apple core. And I started to race for the apple core, and another character, a shadow, came across and got to the apple core before me, and then asked me if I would do anything for that apple core. And I said, yeah. And I remember eating it up. Today, if you watch me eat an apple, I eat everything, including the stem, to remind me of when I was homeless, that I will eat anything. And so no matter whatever success I had in starting these businesses, I just look at myself as a homeless man in a suit. That's all. I never changed about I own being homeless. As I sit here, out in a ranch in Idaho, I still see myself as a homeless person, one step from always being away from homelessness. So I'm very careful, very grateful, and take nothing for granted, including an apple. But anyway, I woke up from that dream and realized that I was starting to die, and I decided to go back to my grandparents' house and beg if I could come back and live with them. I had lost a lot of weight, and on the way to my grandparents' house, there was a restaurant that had a help wanted sign. I went in, and they asked me one question: can you cook? Now, I've never cooked in my life, and all I did was repeat the question. And this is when I knew I had the gift of selling. And I said, oh, can I cook? That's all I said. And he said, you're hired. How old are you? And I said, I'm 19. He said, okay, you're the night manager. And which saved me, because it meant that at 12 o'clock, the restaurant closed. And from 12 to 5 o'clock in the morning, I slept inside the restaurant. I didn't sleep outside anymore. It meant that I could eat as much food as I wanted because we had access to free food. We had bathrooms that were there, and I was hiring people, and that's when I started learning how to manage people, inspire people, and I already at 19 had these incredible adventures and stories of being homeless or being sent away when I was a child, away from my parents when I was 7, or my mother being sent to Tijuana to abort me just before I was born. So from the start of my life, I was always on this road of kind of, people deciding what they were going to do with me. So life is like a book, right? And the first chapters of your book, when you're are really written by other people, because you're too young. as a child, you don't get to write anything. You don't make any rules
Can't
up.
hold a
You've got to
pencil.
obey everything. And eventually, yeah, you can't even hold the pencil. Eventually, however, you're given the pen, maybe the first time you're really given the pencil or pen in your life is when you go off to college, where you're really free of your parents and you get to write chapters. And some of those chapters can be horrible. They can be, you made a bunch of decisions, you made the wrong friends, you got scammed, whatever. You inadvertently hurt somebody, you got hurt. And so the first couple of chapters that you write when you are by yourself are tough, and you become better at writing your own story. This is why I like the idea of versions of software in your life. Every year you want to have a better chapter than the chapter you had before. It doesn't mean bad things are going to happen to you, because I continue to have, bad things that happen to me. My perspective of bad things are different today, and they don't affect me in the same way. They don't affect my self-esteem, certainly, at all, at any level. My self-esteem has always been healthy. So, and that's the one thing I learned in the bush: have a healthy self-esteem. Fight for this right to believe in yourself. So anyway, I ran out of money, and the lack of money saved me from being homeless. I think about Seattle. This has happened in the shadow of the space needle. I think about Seattle today, which has a massive homeless crisis going on. And I am so grateful that there was no city program, government program, somebody in the government trying to figure out how to save me. I'm so grateful that they didn't make me indebted to them, that I'm so grateful that I had to figure out self-reliance and self-belief, and that I didn't have to believe in some mayor or somebody on the city council or governor or whatever, that I was really responsible for my own life, my own liberty, my own happiness. And I'm grateful to live in a system where I was free to try to figure that out on my own without anybody try to give me a handout. So I'm grateful for the hand up I got, but I'm very grateful I never had a handout. And as a homeless person, I never asked for money. I never begged for money, and never once. Nor am I wired to do that. I couldn't have done that. So.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me, just how you're able to, well, for one, that you found this cool opportunity while you were on your way to, beg your way back to, your grandparents' house. So you got all this
Yeah.
managerial experience and developed this real belief in yourself, got some of these self-care things on deck, so to speak, so you can pull them out. Kind of, how did that lead you to going on a mission for, the church, and how did that experience impact you?
Yeah. So a lot of my friends had gone on their missions. By the time, I was 20 years old when I decided that I wanted to go on my mission. I always thought I was going to go on one. And I lived in a community that was fairly successful. I was raised by my grandparents, so that was a little different. But I had this desire to go on a mission. So I was back at a restaurant flipping hamburgers and making, whatever. And I would have my childhood friends that were, in Argentina and in Austria and in French-speaking Quebec, Canada. And, they were just all over the world, Mexico City. They were all over the world. And I just felt like I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't making a difference. So I decided to apply for turn in my paperwork for my mission, and then I had to work really hard to save my own money. So I paid for my own mission. At some point, I think the expense of the mission went up, and I was short of funds, and the High Priest Group Quorum in Seattle First Ward, provided funds for me to stay on my mission. And of course I was called to New York City, and that's where another transformation happened, because nobody knew my story. Nobody knew I was, Dennis the Menace. Nobody knew that There were people that thought I was retarded. There was no, all the baggage of my past was gone. So I liken it to a train station where you have baggage that you leave at the train station because you don't want it to go with you, and then somebody finds your luggage tag and then forwards your luggage to you, and everybody's rifling through your baggage all over again. When I went to New York City as a missionary, your first name is gone. You have a title, elder, and nobody knew who I was. And so I remember landing in JFK Airport, and I realized that I was going to a place where nobody knew me, and I could be whoever I wanted to be. And it was, what version of person did I want to be? And that change on that flight for me was another kind of pivot point where I came off the plane and the old Dennis was gone, and there was a new Dennis that was going to come out, a Dennis that was in a suit, a Dennis with a tie, a Dennis with an appointment book, a Dennis with a purpose and a new identity. And and that is where I learned the art of asking questions, because I was, as a missionary, I was a little different than the typical missionary that went out, because while I was out there to, tell people about my belief, I was deeply interested, before I shared anything about what I believed, what they believed. And I wanted to know how people fell in love. I wanted to know how they built their family. I wanted to know how they built their careers. And like you're interviewing me now, I literally interviewed everybody on my mission. I wanted to figure out how somebody ended up with nothing, and there I was at their house, or how somebody ended up with what seemed to be everything. So in New York, you're talking to a homeless person, and then you're on Wall Street and you're talking to some of the most famous people in the world, and it's just this as a rapid fire environment. My ability in Central Park to find a homeless person was quite profound, because I could see trails that the missionaries that I was with couldn't see. I would look at that and I go, like, there's somebody in there. And I am. And even to this day, if you were to walk with me anywhere, and I was in downtown area, a homeless person. Almost every homeless person, if you watch very carefully, is lower than you. They're usually sitting or sitting on a box or whatever, but they're lower than you. The reason for that is because they don't want to maintain eye contact. They've learned not to look in your eyes. If you're with me, you'll notice the first thing I do is I get on one knee and I'm eye contact with them. I take one hand and I put it on their shoulder and they look at me. And the first thing I say is, I was homeless too. I understand. How you doing? And I just talk to them. I always hand them my business card. I've never changed my telephone number. I've given thousands of my business cards, and I tell them, call me anytime, anywhere, at any point in time. And I would say, probably 6 months ago, I got a call from a person that I handed a car to in the streets of San Diego, probably 20 years ago.
Wow.
That still had an older card of mine, and wanted some help. So I'm asking for it. I'm asking to be. I put myself in harm's way by asking to be a servant when you do that, because there's a lot of responsibility. So think about me. I was an unwanted child. That's why I got separated and sent to my grandparents' house when I was 7. I was an unwanted child when I was born. That's why my family had sent my mother to Tijuana to abort me. I was unwanted when I became homeless. I was unwanted as a homeless person because I noticed as a homeless person, people didn't want to look at me. People could tell there was something not right with me. My hair wasn't cut. I was disheveled. There's a look that a homeless person has. And so think about being a human being where you realize that people don't want to see you. So you sit lower because they don't want to see you. You know that everybody's judging you, which is one of the things that a homeless person figures out about me right away. I won't judge them. I don't care. I don't have time in my life to figure out whether I'm going to give them money or not. I'm just flat out going to give them. I really don't care what they use the money for. I care what I do. I care how I act. I'm going to be kind and thoughtful, and they get to make a choice. And I tell them, I'm going to be kind and thoughtful. I don't know. Please use somebody else's money for your drugs. Please use my money for something good. Feed yourself or whatever. But I won't judge. I won't judge you. I know you might have a demon or whatever. So some of these people are mentally ill, right? So what am I going to do with a mentally ill person? I'm not going to feed them. I'm not going to act kindness. If you think about the Good Samaritan, he didn't go through an interview process. He just started doing stuff and handing out money, and he was the least of the characters that came along that that society would have thought was the most likely not to help, and he didn't ask anything. But his help was complete from beginning to end. It was not enough to bandage his wounds up. It was to get him someplace where he was safe. And so you have to commit time. And it takes time to do that. So that's one of the reasons why I go fast. It's one of the reasons why I always carry change on me. And, it's a random act of kindness. That's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like I learn a lot from myself when I reach out to other people, because you just, I don't know, you're letting something break free in a way, and then you're able to, do things that you wouldn't normally do. I have this thought that I've told myself for a long time, and that's to reach lower to help and reach higher for help. And I really try to get, God's guidance in different things and reaching out to people and different things. Yeah. So how has your relationship with God matured and grown throughout this process, from, your dream to your mission to now?
Yeah, that's a really profound question. So, the thing about having a belief in God is a belief that somehow you're dependent. A lot of people don't like that because they feel like it weakens them. I feel like it strengthens me. It's the opposite for me. So there is for lack of a better way of putting it, a God talk that I have. In other words, in my mind, I feel like God is talking to me. So the more I listen to it, and the more I respond to this kind of still small voice that I have with it in me, the happier I seem to be. If I fight it and resist it, the sadder I seem to be. I have less success. And I'm not talking about just material success. I'm just talking about being successful as a human being. It's sort of like, I have lots of friends, who said, that they believed in God and they just don't hear God's voice anymore. And then they come to the conclusion that they don't believe in God. Some people who have lost their marriages and, they felt like they lost everything, and we all go through that. It's a natural process. That's why my favorite thing to question is the existence of God. It's my favorite thing. Some people might look at that as being sacrilegious, You know, like, why the heck would you, you know, you've already made the decision. But, you know, I reason, you know, I've never drank alcohol, but I question all the time, you know, why don't I drink alcohol? And I go through the reasoning, and it's like, you know, I confirm it. The decision is really easy because I made the decision I wasn't going to do it long ago. And it had nothing to do with religion. You know, it had to do with, you know, the reason I got separated from my mom was because she was an alcoholic. And the reason my family didn't want her to be pregnant with a child was because they knew she wasn't going to be successful. So just get rid of, I was a problem, so just get rid of the problem. My mom had had an abortion before, something I had learned recently. My mom had an abortion before she gave birth to me. She had an abortion after me. But for whatever reason, one time she heard a little voice that said, don't abort him, don't abort him. And interestingly enough, she took the abortion money that she got, went to Oceanside, California, North San Diego, and used the abortion money to rent a small place out. And then, like me, she became homeless at 19. Same story, wandering around the streets. Back in 1952, if you were pregnant, you didn't have a job. You know, I mean, they treated women very differently back then. You know, it was almost like an illness. You're pregnant, can't do anything. Stop all, you know. And so she couldn't even work. She became so despondent. She went to the Oceanside Pier, climbed over the railing to take her own life. When two Marines saw her and coaxed her over the railing and took her downtown San Diego, where I was given birth at the Salvation Army clinic called the Good Shepherd's Inn on May 15th, 1952. And one of the two Marines that saved me was Joseph Conforto, and that's how I ended up with my last name, Conforto, which comes from an orphanage in Italy for people who didn't have parents, a mother or a father. So it's a really good name for me, and I really like my name. I honor this name that I have, and I have taken all the attributes of being Italian. I love cooking Italian food. I like going to Italy. I like being around my Italian friends. All my Italian friends think I'm Italian, but I'm about as Italian as nothing. You know, I think I got 100% Italian heart and probably 1% Italian genes. So it's interesting that my mom made this choice to save me, and that whole process led me to believe that maybe I could do that same thing for others. That's where I ended up with the empathy thing. You know, think about viewing your life where nobody wanted you, and you know how that feels. You begin to have empathy for others when you look at them. They go like, man, they may have felt the way I felt. You know, so you've never been homeless, right?
No.
So there's no way that you could have the level of empathy that I have for a homeless person, right? If you were raised in a good family, you know you have no idea what it's like to be rejected by your parents. So no wonder I ended up with a big family. No wonder I ended up with 40 foster children, 28 foreign exchange students, 16 age unwed moms, and 4 students from an Indian reservation out of Tuba City, Arizona, Navajos. You know, it was because I wanted to have a life that I wouldn't knowingly allow others around me to go through what I felt like I was going through. I mean, how terrible is it to have a lot of confidence and belief in yourself and watch somebody as you walk down the street and simply walk by them knowing they have nothing, and knowing that you learn to have a belief in yourself, and that, you know, the problem is it takes time. So then you got to make a choice. So this goes back to this God question of what are we hearing? And my belief is, for people who believe that God is not speaking to them, I think I look at it as a radio station where you're dialing in this station. the voice is always going, everything's there. It's whether you're dialed in or not. So depending on what you're doing in your life, you could be totally dialed out, and you just got to constantly dial in. And that doggone thing is so sensitive and has to be right at the right spot. If you're moving around your house, you got to redial it again. If you're moving around your life, you got to redial this thing all the time to keep that connection going. But I would say to everybody that I would know, God speaks to you all day long. He tells you all day long what to do. He tells you all day long how to feel, how to think. They're all positive things. He tells us as we're walking down the street and we see something to do something. And all of us have had this experience where we probably feel a prompting to do something and we just push it out. That's when the voice is really loud, louder than normal. I think when our life is over, if we believe in God, if he ever reveals to us the personal recording that he sent to us throughout every moment of our life, we will be shocked. We will be shocked of all the messages that we missed. We will be shocked of all the good that we could have done that cost us nothing. One moment, one kind word, one pat on the back, one helping hand of somebody trying to get into a car, out of a car, helping somebody with a grocery, getting something off of a shelf. Our ability to serve is endless all day long in our office environments. We see people that we walk by, we know they're having a bad day, but we just don't have the time for a kind word. And it's really a shame. I think we will be mortified of the difference of what we could have done with our time versus what we did with our time, of every single moment of every single day. That's why, like, even in this interview, I don't know what questions you're going to ask. I just know that I want to be thoughtful because you're asking me a question, and I'm trying to, give you my very best, the best that I can give you. And I try to do that with everybody around me, because it's like I'm trying to get the best version of me out. And I think we all owe a responsibility to each other to get the best version of ourselves out. This is why, sometimes in a close family environment, the people that we're cruelest to, or say the most unkind things to, are the people we're closest to, our parents, or siblings, or, whatever. We feel like we got to write a passage to say anything because we know them or they're part of the family. That the greatest honored guests that we have in our life is our family. We'll never have a guest in our life greater than our own family. And by the time we figure that out, it's later in our life where we're beginning, finding the new version of ourselves. A lot of people figure out how much their parents meant to them when they're at their funeral service of their parents. Then it dawns on them, like how important that voice was to them. Then they think of all of the things they could have done or should have done and didn't do. Especially as they age, it becomes more and more apparent. That's why if you look at society repeats the same problems over and over again. Why? Because young people aren't old people, and old people have gone through it, and young people want to learn the same lesson that history has taught 1,000 times over of what you can't do. We try to break the norms of society and think that somehow that we are more enlightened, that we discovered a new level of kindness that people have figured out 1,000 times. And, no matter what we do, we end up with murders, we end up with war, we end up with, just all sorts of stuff because we don't learn. We don't learn from people that have gone on before us. We have this thing that somehow we're going to discover a new truth instead of a truth that has been there for 1,000 thousands of years and tested by billions of people. And, the human experience is the most tested experience of all. Forget about all the drug testing and all of that stuff. The human experience of being human is so well tested that when you try to break the norms, you just break yourself against them. So, yeah. Does that answer your question about my
You're changing.
relationship with God?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. There's some things that, have changed over time, that as a whole, you still, there are those other things that you cherish and you live by. So that's a very good way to look at it. I'm kind of wondering right now, Dennis, for all those people that might be at home or in between jobs, or they just graduated from college and they're kind of, struggling to take that next step, and to also give themselves grace when it's taking a long time. What are your thoughts on that, of like not, I don't know, just beating yourself up?
Well, beating yourself up is useless, right? Nobody got better because they beat themselves up. They got better because they did something about the situation that they were in. Arriving is, we all want to arrive, and everybody's got a different view of arriving. Some people want to arrive and be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. Law enforcement, FBI, they want to be a pilot, they want to be a race car driver. It could be a veterinarian. It could be a million things that they want to be, and we're all anxious to get there. The human tendency is to look for the shortcut, but there's no shortcut to arriving. Earlier today, I gave you the example of you hit a home run. Even though you hit the home run, you still got to run the bases for it to count. You've accomplished the goal. I've always wondered what happened if you hit a home run and you just went to the dugout. I think they would not count it. I don't know that it's even in the handbook because I've never seen anybody do it. But no matter what, you've got to, even if you have arrived, you still got to run the bases, and you got to run them in the right order. You can't run them backwards. You can't do them in a random order. You've got to run through the bases. So there is a price to pay for arriving in life. There is a price to pay when you want to arrive before you earn the right to arrive. And the whole point of arriving is enjoying the journey as you go through it. This is not about winning or losing. This is about winning or learning. And when you're trying to arrive, you're in the learning mode. So learn. I mean, I wouldn't have, I've worked for plenty of people for free because I wanted to learn. I didn't care if they paid me or not. I just wanted to learn. I got more value out of that than anything else that I was doing. So I think if you have a plan and you have a goal of what it is you're trying to do, you're lucky. And you shouldn't be discouraged by that. A lot of people don't have a plan. The real question is for the person who is going to college or not going to college and trying to figure out where they're going. The truth is that their future is coming fast towards them faster than they're going towards their future. And life is very serendipitous. Hardly anybody ends up doing anything the way they thought it was going to do. Here, let me give you a truth of business. There's no such thing as a perfect business plan. Nobody ever wrote up a business plan, and that's what happened in the business plan. The business plan is a series of pivots. It's what you think it's going to be, and then you learn as you go along, you make mistakes, and you pivot, and you're trying to make as many mistakes as fast as you can to get through all the mistakes, to get to a more perfect system and a way of doing something. People get very discouraged during that period of time. We call it the grind, and it's like having your face in a meat grinder, and it's painful. It's painful going through school. It's painful starting a new business. It's painful going into a new environment. These are pain points, but these are places where you're learning. So the real question that people have to ask themselves is not where they're at, it's whether they're learning or not. And what are they doing to put themselves in the pain of learning? Because learning is a painful thing. It's a painful thing. You're learning to do something. You pick up a guitar for the first time and you go to play a guitar. It hurts your fingertips like you cannot believe, and you just got to work through the pain. You know, there's arguments and theories that if you do something for 10,000 hours, that's the magic formula. You become world class at it. If you want to be a world-class musician, practice 10,000 hours. Now, you can be a studio musician. That doesn't mean you have the creative ability to write music. That's a different thing in a different space. If you want to be, a great hockey player, 10,000 hours of, getting really, really good at it. If you want to be an NBA star, but you're 4'11", it's probably not going to happen. Right? So there are limitations to what you can do, but could you do at 4'11" and be involved in the NBA? Well, there's a million things. If you love the sport, you could be in promotions, you could do all sorts of things. So I look at it like a matrix. What are the different industries? There's 40 of them. And then what are the different jobs? There's about 40 of them. So I may want to be in travel and entertainment. I may want to be in energy. I may want to be in science. I want to be maybe in engineering or aeronautics. And then in those, I may want to be in R&D. I want to maybe in sales. I may want to be, whatever it is. And eventually you narrow what is it that you want to do? Where is your passion? And I like these matrix because they force you to kind of target in and then begin to find what your interest is. I have sons that were Eagle Scouts, and one of the greatest things for them, and I never realized it until they were taking all their merit badges. One son became an architect because he did a kind of a technical drawing merit badge. The other son became a movie producer because he worked with cameras. So it's really interesting how you end up finding your niche. I had a daughter who became a police officer, but every time I got in a car and she saw a siren go off, she made me follow the doggone thing, and then she was at the window, wanted to see the arrest or the fire or whatever was going on. She wanted to be, and I knew right away at a young age where these kids wanted to be at. And boy, isn't it great if you have a parent that figures out where you want to be, and then they help you, or friends help you to get there. So one example, I had my son who wanted to be an architect. I have a friend of mine who didn't have any children, and I said, "This is my son. He's now your son. Teach him to be an architect." That son of mine had more tutoring from that guy that none of the other people that were going to school. They never had anybody like my son had. And my son had all of these advantages. He was going to symposiums and doing things, and then did work that none of the other ones I don't think ever got to do that he got to do. So, and part of the scary thing about deciding what you want to be is declaring it. Declare it, which means you have to get on stage and you have to say, "I'm going to be an architect." That's a scary thing. "I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be the greatest guitar player in the world. I'm going to be the greatest surgeon in the world. I'm going to be the greatest whatever it is." But you got to declare it to a room of non-believers. But people that see you as a teenager or a young adult that think you're a numbskull, and you get up and declare it, and then every day you fight to believe it until others around you begin to look at you and go like, "Seriously, man, this person really wants to do this thing," and they're all about it. They dedicated themselves. And then The non-believers become believers, and they start helping you network. They know somebody that knows somebody, and your own belief is converting everybody around you till everybody believes that you're going to arrive on a stage. Look, I've started 11 businesses. It's a scary thing. It's a lonely place to get on stage and boldly declare, this is where I'm going to go, because most people look at you and say you can't get there. In the middle of the grind, when people think you're in the middle of, maybe faltering, failing, or whatever, you have to keep that belief still going and get everybody who believed and then started not to believe again, because it's a cycle. We all go through these cycles of believing in ourselves, not believing in ourselves, believing in others, not believing in others, believing in God, not believing in God. And, it's all of this cyclical stuff of how we see and view the world, how we see and view ourselves. People who are struggling, who are young, eventually have to declare these words: I believe in me. When everybody else doesn't believe in me, I'm going to believe in me. I'm going to fight everybody till they believe in me. And I'm going to first wage war in my own mind between me and God, that I believe in me. And that becomes the important thing in that relationship with God, because the one thing, I've come to the conclusion about God is he believes in me. So I deserve to believe in me.
Yeah, amen
I
to
deserve
all
to
that you
believe in me.
said.
If I believe that I'm one of God's greatest creations, not as me as a person, me as a human being. If he created me in his image, and everything that I see was the universe and the sky and the stars and all of that was created for me, I should be in awe of what my version, what is it that he sees in me that I can't see in me. And then this poem I wrote, what shall I reach for my life? It ends with, I shall reach beyond the furthest star. That's what I will reach for. I will reach beyond the furthest star. And I love reaching, and I love believing, and I love believing in me. I do. And I love helping other people believe in themselves. If I have any gift, it's helping people believe in themselves. I see something in everyone. And I think I learned to do that the day I was under the bush, and I realized what I believe God saw in me. As soon as I figured out that relationship, I thought I could do that for others, maybe. And maybe I would be a gift as a homeless person under the tree for others. And believe in me. It's worth it. I can tell you this, nobody believes in me more than me. And I got a lot of people that believe in me, but nobody will ever believe in me more than me. Nobody.
That's awesome. Yeah, except God. He sees the whole picture of that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show, Dennis, and sharing your experiences with yourself and everything that you've shared. It's definitely given me more perspective, and I hope it's helped all those listeners here too. How can people find you?
Well, it depends on what they want to find me for. There's some people I don't want to find me. They might want to do me harm. Well, look, I have a LinkedIn page. There's 3 Dennis Confortos in the world. One is a famous, handsome Italian soccer star in Italy. That's not me. There's another guy that is a famous guitar player and motorcycle enthusiastic and tattoo artist in Brazil. That's not me. And then there's a guy in a suit. That one's me. So they can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me at dennisconforto.com. And, I don't know why they would want to find me, but I can never have enough friends. Let me tell you something that one of the things I hate about Facebook, the principle of unliking somebody. I've never unliked anybody. I have people that like me in life, not on Facebook, in life, but I love everybody. I may not like everybody, but I love everybody. Some people are more likable than others, but I have genuine love for everyone. And I've been very fortunate. I have thousands of friends, and almost all of my childhood friends, almost all of them, almost 100 of them that I still stay in contact with. 68, and I'm 68 years old, and I'm still in contact with them, maintain my relationship with them, because every friend is worth it to me. So anyway, if anybody wants to have a friend in me, I'm happy to share a part of my life with them.
Yeah, I think there's so much that you can still give, Dennis. And it's amazing to me, like when I, got to go to your house for that brief period as a missionary, it did make me think a lot, like, how, staying true to your principles and giving back, you're just so much happier. So thank you for everything you shared with us, and good luck with everything else you're doing with HouseCheck. We didn't really talk much about that, but it's doing really well. When I was there, it was just getting started, and I told you this over the phone recently. Today I was like, yeah, I didn't really believe a lot in it, but it's doing super good. So way to go, and believing in it, and believing in you, and putting your belief in
yeah
others.
Yeah, well, everything goes in cycles, right? So we just went through a pandemic, and the pandemic's affected everything. So guess what? Giant pivot again. And you almost these things are restart buttons, and you almost have to restart things over again, because the whole economy has to restart again. The thing is no matter what happens, you can never give up. You can never stop believing. Yeah. So
Amen.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Dennis. Remember, everybody, to yield today, and it'll be a better tomorrow. Envision some love in your life, see that love for yourself, and put it to work. So thanks, Dennis, for being on the show.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.